And we are live.
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, good morning.
Welcome one and all. Brand new morning here at Hammerhouse.
Yes.
We are live. People in the chat, let us know if you hear any audio issues. I believe we should be fine.
Oh,
Every morning.
you have MUP.
What is
Yes,
MUP?
Mantic Universe Podcast.
Oh, Mantic
wow.
Universe Podcast. Okay, let's just give us a second. We can hear you. Fantastic. Thank you, Mantic
Thank you.
Universe Podcast. Okay. So welcome to the 4th live stream of Hammercast. Okay, the podcast show brought to you by Hammerhouse, and of course, as usual, my wonderful co-host Johan.
Hey.
And then today we have 2 very special guests. Okay, not just one guest. Mind you, so far we've only been having 1 guest. Now we have 2. Either double the trouble or double the fun. However you see it. Okay, but we got 2 of them. I'm going to introduce them right now. We have General Gaddafi, not the one from Libya. Our very own Singaporean General Gaddafi, and Page Neo. No
Hello.
military honorific, unfortunately.
Newbie dice.
AKA Newbie Dice, yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, so maybe I start with you, Gaddafi. Maybe you can just briefly introduce yourself. Then after Gaddafi, then Page Neo. Please share with us a little bit about yourself and what does it mean to be a Pathfinder.
Okay, thanks Johan and John for having me on. I am, as Johan said, a Pathfinder. Basically, I've been in miniature gaming for the past 25 years now. So we started off with Warhammer Fantasy, basically helping my close friend to paint his miniatures at that time. I didn't really know how to play. Then we had school and all that. So I only really came back to the hobby about slightly more than 10 years ago. So we started back with Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition at that time. Then GW decided to can it.
Implode the
Yes.
universe.
Yes. So
We will get into that shortly. Okay?
Yeah. So end
Mind
times.
you, I got so much to say. Bros, you don't even believe it. Okay. Paige, let us know about yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been playing war games for 12 years, since 2012 when I graduated from uni. That's when I can afford miniatures. Okay, so I went into Warhammer Fantasy. That was 8th edition at the time. That's how I know Gad and John. John was training all the new players at the time. Played for 1 year, got sick of it. I felt that we were playing the ETC comms, right? So I felt that every faction is very restrained to a certain build.
Yep.
So it's like, why am I playing just to see if I can play this build better than other players? So then I went into Warhammer Hots, which was one of the premier tabletop war games, competitive war games at the time. That's where I met Johan. He was new, completely new, but he started with Warhammer Hots,
Yes.
which is very rare. Okay. Then I played that for 3 years. After that, I felt that this game getting a bit too bloated, a lot of gotchas, too many things to remember. So I knew Gad back then, so I knew he was pushing Kings of War. So I went back to Kings of War, and since 2015, been playing Kings of War with Gad, and it's been 9 years already. Quite crazy. 9 years.
Damn. And this is how the incestuous relationship all comes about. That's how we all are connected. Okay, here in Hammerhouse. Okay, everyone is connected.
Yes. Over 12 years of history.
I think more than slightly
More than that.
Yeah.
More than that. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know exactly how many years now. I don't bother to count. I'm not going to tell you guys my age, even though I've explained it before. But so yeah, we were all playing. I mean, most of us we were playing. Started off in fantasy. Fun fact. Here's a little fun fact. Here's a little bit of historical Hammerhouse war gaming lore in Singapore. So when I was helping Paige and some of the new guys. Training it them up for Warhammer 8th edition. I was the one who came up with the term Young Bloods. I don't know if you guys remember this. And the reason I came up with the term Young Bloods was because I was playing Lizardman. And then the Lord of the Lizardman was called the Old Blood.
Blood,
Yeah. So then I decided, okay, see, you're definitely not old bloods, okay? So I'm gonna call you guys young blood, and I think the name still persists till this
Yes,
day.
yes.
so
We still run tournaments called Youngblood
correct, yeah.
to date.
So I'm very glad for that. All right, so today, the central topic we're going to, right? Okay, we're going to talk about rank and flank games. So far, we've been talking about a whole bunch of other games. They all have their unique flavors. They're all tabletop. They're all games and hobbies that people enjoy. But so far, we haven't really been. This will be the first time we delve into rank and flank, which is actually the core component of me as a gamer. I love rank and flank games. As we all are lah, since we're all playing Kings of War. It's definitely a very unique and different take on the tabletop gaming genre.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll leave it to the two pathfinders. Maybe you'll give me or give the audience some sort of a primer, okay, on rank and flank games, what you feel about them.
I think the first question should be, what is a rank and flank?
Yeah, what is a rank and flank game? All right, so take it away, you guys.
You want to take this? Or?
Yeah. So, okay, basically, it's in the name. Rank and flank refers to miniatures being in ranks. And I mean, the main, one key, the idea behind rank and flank games is having facings for you. We have square bases, means squares or rectangles, with front facing, flank facing, and rear facings. So your facing is extremely important in rank and flank games.
So it's like okay, not all. I mean, there are some games which is not rank and flank but still have facing. I think like 40K also, for example. I wouldn't call them rank and flank, but I believe they do have.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not
They
anymore.
they used to have. I think War of Hordes also back then had face, but I think front and rear. But I think what's unique about rank and flank is very clearly defined because it's either a square or rectangle. So basically, you're drawing the arrows out on all the diagonal points, right?
Yes.
Wherever there's a front cone, right? Drawing out from the front diagonal. Then after that, there's the two at the side, and then there's one at the back. So this is the one of the more unique aspects of rank and flank, which is very clearly defined front, flank, and rears. Yeah. And then anything else you guys want to elaborate on?
Yeah. So even if that's the case, so what makes it important, right? What's the big deal about having ranks and flanks, right? Is that your facing matters a lot, and it really feels a lot more like war on the tabletop, where you crush the opponent's side. Now you're gonna turn around and gonna smash into the sides of their front lines, and that conveys bonuses in the game, and that feels much like how you control a battle in the world, at least historically lah. So that gives that unique feeling that you crush their side forces. Now you're gonna pincer in, and then you're gonna smash into their center lines, but from the side, and then that conveys a lot of bonuses. For Kings of War, is double the attacks from the side. So you can imagine how strong that is. So the strategic positioning, you really feel like this general that I must shore up my forces here so that my flank doesn't collapse, and then they're gonna smash into my main lines. So that's the feeling you get when you're playing a rank and flank game, as compared to a lot of other war games that is very skirmish. So you pick up a round-based miniature, you can walk 6 inches, you can go in any direction, right? Where you face doesn't matter. So there's a lot more strategic positioning and like chess-like feel to the game. Strategic chess-like feel, yeah.
Yeah, the chess-like component is very apt. The positioning matters so much, right? That it's quite unbelievable that you really have to be very precise in how you position individual units, and of course how it plays out across the board with your own individual army, and how it plays into not just this turn that you're playing, but the subsequent turn. Like what will happen as a result of your positioning your last turn. How you position last turn determines whether this fella you can charge or not, whether another enemy unit is in your flank or is it in your front. Are you blocking your own units? Can someone else come in and block you? Like the positioning of it is, I believe, the most crucial aspect for rank and flank. Is very much less forgiving Basically, one mistake and you will feel
Yes.
it on. You will feel it into your bones. Okay, you will forever rue the day that, oh man, if only I've walked like 2 inches more to the side, and then but that's the nature of the game lah, which I greatly enjoy. And yeah, so let's okay. Okay, so we have look at these handsome devils from Luke S. Okay, I'm sure referring to
The Pathfinders.
yeah, the Pathfinders
Luke
lah.
Schaefer.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
Hi, Luke,
awesome.
yeah.
And then
Hello.
Mantic Universe podcast is Dave, by the way. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Dave. How are you doing?
Yeah. Dave
Okay.
from New Zealand. Hi, Dave.
Dave from New Zealand. Okay. So let's get into the like for Mantic for Kings of War specifically. Okay. I love Kings of War. I think it's a great game.
We all do.
We all do.
Yep.
But let me tell you one of the things that I particularly how to say not enjoy about Kings of War. Okay. Here's my one criticism.
Okay.
Okay. It's very simplified. There's a good and bad side to it. Coming from it, so there's a lot to unpack in this. When I say simplified, the problem is we all come from 8th edition Warhammer, where the games are just redonkulous. it just goes so wild, and then from there you transition into Kings of War, and you feel like wow, everything matches up. Right, the rules are very, very good, very clean cut, very precise, and you know what you're doing. You know what your opponent is gonna do. But then now I'm just wondering, right? Is it too simplified? Is it too much like, oh man, I don't really get the fun factor, that crazy wild fun factor that I used to have from fantasy. Yeah.
I mean, we both can have a go at it. I think it's a balance. 8th edition, don't get me wrong, it was fun, but games took way longer. And I remember my head used to hurt after 1 or 2 games a day, which is what I experienced playing fantasy. Because there's too many variables. There's too many random things that could happen. There's too many calculations to do. It's a lot of back and forth. You have to be engaged the entire time in the game because you also roll dice on your opponent's turn, which is not the case for Kings of War. You only roll dice on your turn. So when your opponent's playing, you can actually like take a break while still thinking about the game. So I think Kings of War is actually getting more and more, adding more and more flavor. But the ironic thing is some players are pushing back. I think one of the key mechanics they just introduced is command dice, which is something quite common in other games. So I mean, majority I think a lot of people are on the fence about it. Some people think it's adding flavor, but it's adding more complexity to the game. So it's the balance in terms of game design, and also for the newer factions. I think for Kings of War, such as Twilight Kin, the Halflings, Forces of Abyss, there's a bit more flavor in terms of the special rules, new units. They have introduced things like auras. You can buy more spells now, which all didn't exist back in 2nd edition. Now we are playing 3rd edition, more or less.
Almost 4th.
Almost 4th, yeah. So Paige, maybe you wanna chime in on that?
Yeah, so Kings of War, we can say that it's simplified but also elegant. So I always like to compare to the game of chess. Chess, the rules are pretty fixed. A young person can learn and pick up chess to play and pick up chess. But the international tournament scene is very developed, right? A lot of people play it, and there are lots of strategies and talks involved. So to me, a war game, right? Just the fact that there's no grid. You measure with tape measures, and like we say, the positioning is very important. Just these elements alone makes the game infinitely more complex than chess already. Like chess can be beaten by a computer because the permutations are fixed, right? The number of grids, the number of steps, all the pieces you input in the computer, and I don't feel excited thinking if I play chess, I can never beat a computer, right? But Kings of War or any other war games, the computer cannot do it yet, right? So even if you say it's very simple, but I think it's already a very complex game, and you can still have lots of fun with it. But being simplified, yes, you play war games, you think about fantasy, you have the Lord of the Rings playing in your head, right? So you want some epic moments, I think there's more and more flavor being injected into Kings of War as the additions and the supplements go. Just this past few weeks, I've been playing Forces of the Abyss. So I've been trying to tweak my list back and forth. So I wanted to try to optimize my list. I think, okay, I want to put more hammer units, but the hammer units are kind of vanilla. Like, okay, they have so many attacks, they hit so hard, they have so much armor piercing, crushing strength. Then I feel like, hey, if I make the list like that, feels not very flavorful. So I make a conscious decision, okay, I'm going to put these two models in my list and make them work. There's the Well of Souls and the Cronius, because they have very unique special rules. Well of Souls can absorb damage from its other units onto itself, so it sacrifices itself to heal others. And that's a rule that's not in any other faction. So I think there are more and more flavor being injected, and there are more and more special rules that's being put into every faction that gives them some unique flavor. Command Dice is another one of them. So akan datang, it's getting better. It's getting more and more flavor, I feel. But even as it's staged now, we can have lots of fun and flavorful games. We have a lot of campaign games with some unique special rules also, and that has been lots of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that people are missing is I think back in fantasy you could kit out your character. You could give him a different armor, different sword, let him ride a dragon, it feels cool. But as we can see in the OVA now, that isn't the most balanced thing lah. I think dragons are dominating the OVA. Yeah, that's something to discuss later maybe.
So I think, or maybe Johan, do you have anything you want to contribute to the defense of Kings of War, or would you like to join me and be on the dark side and
To be honest, I haven't really played fantasy. I've never touched fantasy. As the OO came back, which we will talk about later, I looked at some of the games. I tried to get into it. Like what God says, you can kit out your characters, which Kings of War doesn't have. I would say it's I think there should be a balance between complexity, fun, and nice, good, clean rules and simple. To me, I come from, like what Page said, I'm an abnormality. I came from War Machine and Hordes. My first game was War Machine and Hordes. It wasn't anything that comes from Warhammer. So War Machine and Hordes, during that time, Mark II, it has very clean black and white rules. Plug and play internationally. No matter where you go, the rules are that and that alone. So it's a plug and play internationally for game rules. Compared to 40k at that time, you cannot say that for 40k at that time. I'm not talking about it now, but I'm talking about it at the time, 2013, 2014. Yeah. So I came from there, and I like these kind of rules where you can plug and play internationally. And that can be said the same for Kings of War. You go to UK, you go to the United States, everything is plug and play. So I like this kind of game. Yeah.
So maybe I further clarify what I mean by actually, Gaddafi, you brought up a good point, which is about the flavor, the individual flavor of the factions, of the units, so on and so forth, and how I agree with you that the halflings are, for instance, I think the halflings are kind of one of the more recent examples of how flavor is being injected. But when I think of flavor in a game, I'm going to use both 8th edition and Warhammer Hordes as an example for flavors. I think it gives a more all-encompassing idea of what I'm talking about. So when we come to 8th edition, the High Elf and Dark Elf, right, are like completely different, for example. So High Elf has this like always strike first, like the army-wide is always strike first. Then for Dark Elf I think it's a reroll to wound or something like that. Basically, even though they are both elf, they both function very differently. And same thing with the Wood Elves, right? The Wood Elf also have this like slightly different way of doing things. And I think, and let's say, for example, Lizardman. Lizardman has a whole entire, like the game just plays so differently from any other faction in 8th edition. You have the big burly Lizardman Saurus, and then after you have the tiny little skinks. I don't like that. There is very, if you look at ogres, ogres have the belly charge. I don't know what is it, the impact attacks, and then so they have very very distinct like army styles for each and every one of the factions, to the point where you feel like, okay, this particular faction can fit what I'm trying to play. I remember, like, for example, with Warmer Hots, the Signas, they have the gun majors, you know, they have the gun majors, the Signa and the Scorns, they are both they both have so wildly different way of playing, right? It's just so unique, you know, even in their look, in their spells, in their special rule sets, so on and so forth. All these contributes greatly to flavor. Now, if I look at Kings of War, okay,
let's talk about elves and Sylvan Kin.
What am I looking at? Okay, I'm looking at, do I want a cavalry with Crushing Strength 1 and Thunderous Charge 1, or do I want another cavalry with Crushing Strength 2? Or do I want some flying cavalry with Crushing Strength 1? Or, Thunderous Charge 1? You know, do I want this dragon which can Fireball 8? Or do I want this dragon which has 10 attacks? So, the delineation between each of all these items, right? The hammers, the anvils. The way I see it is, I'm just swapping the rules, the universal rules, okay? Not the individual unique faction special rule. I'm swapping the individual rule of Crushing Strength, Thunderous Charge. Maybe add some regeneration, or, you know,
Delete or vicious.
yeah, it's
Pathfinder.
You know, it's I don't feel it. I don't feel the
difference is very slight, I would say.
You mean
Not-
the difference between the units?
Yes.
Yeah. I think
Correct.
that's like the issue for me, lah. I agree. Like I said, going back to what I agree with you guys, like Forces of Abyss, Halflings. Twilight Kin, I don't know. I don't feel that strongly about it. They have some like the witchy aura thing. I haven't played it yet, but I also don't feel it's enough to be faction defining. I think the Halflings, with their unit, the look and feel, they have some outside of combat shooting, or is it outside of combat? I can't remember. They're bombardiers, right? I think. So those are like what I consider unique flavors. So yeah, maybe you guys can discuss a little bit further about that.
I think going back to fantasy, right, a lot of it also depends on the lore. If you look at it, high elves and the elves, they're just either elves with bows or weapons, or they ride horses or cold ones. But what really defines it is the lore actually gives you that kind of feel when you actually play the game. The artwork, the lore, it's been around for like 40 years. So I mean, a lot of the units for both factions, they have their equivalents. It's just the names are cooler. You know, Dragon Princess sound way cooler.
By the way, the Dragon Princess, right, is a funny ass story. They are supposed to be riding dragons, but then they ran out of dragons, so they ride horses instead. Then after that, they put the helmet on the horse that looked like a dragon, which I thought was just the funniest thing. Like,
That was the story.
yeah. That's the deal with the Dragon Princess. It's so silly, but that's the thing, right? About 8th edition is there's all this silliness baked into the whole thing, but then on the paper it sounds cool and whatever, but it's a lot of it is just completely, you know, like
ridiculous.
Wow. It's just such, I tell you, there's the whole 8th edition world is just like filled with goobers, I tell you.
Yeah. So yeah, going to that. So yeah, I agree. It's quite samey, the difference between units, which is a criticism of Kings of War, which I agree. But at the same time, it makes the game smooth, fast, clean. So it's a lower barrier of entry. I mean, I think one thing I can say for sure is that there are too many factions in Kings of War. With 28 factions, it's even harder to differentiate between each faction. So I think consolidation of the factions will definitely help, and making each faction a bit more unique. I think one of the ideas that have been popping up, this is just purely speculation on our part because we are both playtesters as well, is using characters to unlock certain units. That is something that is hopefully being looked at for the next edition. So at least it's a bit more flavor. If I bring this General X, he has his personal
Bodyguard unit,
or he can unlock a certain unit from a certain region, for example. So that flavor takes. I think they have to make it a conscious effort from the ground up. I think for Kings of War, especially the newest edition, they have been adding armies. So every army they add, they try to add different flavor. Like I think Northern Alliance is another army with I think quite a distinct flavor with the frozen mechanic rule that only they have. So I think when they redo the entire game for the next edition, they could probably build armies from the ground up and make it flavorful. And also there is the issue of armies that are Warhammer Legacy armies or Fantasy Legacy armies, like orcs, dwarves, elves. It's a known fantasy trope, and you need to have them in the game. But what can you do to make it distinct? Make it your own, which I think Mantic are trying to do, like with Twilight King. So yeah, Paige, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, so I think for Kings of War, they have a list of universal special rules, and that list, I think, is not very big. So when they design units, when they say, okay, what kind of rules do I want to give these units, they pluck from this very small library of special rules. So what hit me just now when John was talking about the fantasy armies was ogres. So the ogres in Kings of War, they have this universal rule. All of them has this rule brutal, which is +1 when you make the morale check on the enemy. Yeah, so that used to be a very ogre thing. Not a lot of other units from other armies have brutal.
Yep.
Not anymore.
But not anymore, because as the game expands, more and more units come in, right? Then they're like, when they design the new unit, right? Like, how can I make this unit just slightly more viable? I'll give him brutal. So then brutal becomes more and more common. So yes, that sort of dilutes the flavor. So I think going forward, they should expand the list of universal special rules that there are. It's happening, but not as fast as we would like. Like Ferocious Charge is something new, Ordered March, things like that. That would delineate factions more. And of course, every faction, they have certain special characters that have their own very unique special rules, like what I mentioned, the Well of Souls earlier. I think they are very cautious in how many they implement, because for opponent fighting against forces of the abyss, right? Most of it is okay. I can tell you, these are these rules, but then I have to specifically explain. Well of Souls does this. I suck wounds from my own units 9 inches from me before I charge. Okay, so then I have to explain this. So then if you multiply that by 28 factions, and maybe each faction has a few, then it might be difficult for new players to jump in. I thought I know how to play, but then I don't know your character can do this funky thing. So there needs to be a balance there. Right now, Kings of War I'd say is in a good state, especially for new players. They come in, they play one game, the next time they play against a new player with a totally different faction, they sort of grasp what the opponent can do, even like this a new player in his second game, and can have an enjoyable game where they don't feel like they don't know what the hell is going on, and then they're just being knocked around. But they know that, okay, yeah, I know how to play, I know what your army does. It's just you outsmarted me because you're a more experienced player. So yes, I know. It's not that I don't know your unit can do that, that's why I lose. So I think that's a very good point, a good plus point for Kings of War. So, and the thing is, most of the time, there are so many factions, and then like what's the difference? What's the flavor difference, right? It's mainly in the toolbox of units you can choose from. So just now they mentioned elves, which are like high elves, and Sylvankin, which are like wood elves. So although they share a lot of similar units, there's just a little bit of difference. But with that little bit of difference, right, it really changes what kind of list you can build from these very similar factions. And you can see our Kings of War players, right? They all jump between faction and faction. They're like, I built a list for this, right? But don't have these tools. So I jump to the elves. I built a elf list. I was like, okay, I don't have all the tools I want. So maybe let's try to build a list in Sylvankin. And then they're like, okay, because of the unit mix of units I can build a list that I want. There's like a lot of Pathfinder, or very fast, or slower, or very shooty, whatever it is. Yeah, so although there's a mix, there's a lot of similarities between units, but there's still a lot of space for people to get creative and have fun list building as well.
I think just one thing to note. I think another thing, I don't know whether it's good or bad, but a lot of armies share units. So like gargoyles are in like 3 different armies. Like elves, forces in nature, and silverkin, they all share, and the herd, they all share forest shamblers, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have the same unit duplicated in so many armies, it definitely takes away from the flavor of the different armies. Yeah, so that is something that probably is good from a point of, it's easier for a new player to start. If you have one unit you can use for many armies, but at the same time it dilutes the flavor of each army.
I don't want to sound like I'm just like bashing Mantic the whole time, and there are a lot of things that
we need to have an advocate.
I definitely appreciate what Mantic is trying to do, and it's very obvious what they're trying to do. They are serving as a refugee camps, right, for asylum seekers such as myself, right? We are all orphans of the old world imploding, or of the
War Machine
Hordes world imploding, and I'm very grateful for that, right? One of the things, I don't know if this is like a common saying, but Kings of War is definitely very model agnostic, and I think it reflects greatly in the rule set, in the unique composition, the unique listings of the individual factions, right? That's why there's so many overlaps. It's not because they are lazy and then they don't want to spend their time to go and work up more stuff. It's that they know that a lot of these guys, they already have these models. Why not use them for something, right? Why not make them viable in your new game? Like make it an enjoyable experience, and I think that's a good thing. Overall, I feel like I'm very grateful for Mantic, right, for putting gamers first, and I think that's a very admirable thing. When you take a look at the state of gaming now, right, where it's just like no, we just need to clear our warehouse first, and I think it shows a very stark difference in the philosophy lah. And okay, now I'm gonna go into our chat, which is
exploding.
It's going absolutely bananas.
Really?
Okay?
Wow.
And I'm gonna get into some of it. Okay. So Luke, King of War is getting more stuff slowly, more complexity, etc. The question isn't whether is it too simple, but is it the right complexity? Yeah, I think that's also kind of what we are trying to ascertain here. What exactly is what we call the right complexity? Dave from Mantic Universe Podcast, I think they are going slow introducing things so they have the flexibility to pull something back if they need to, instead of releasing a whole of complexity and leave it alone for years. That's true also. Okay?
Yes,
that's absolutely facts. So I think War Hordes was one of the more egregious offenders with the faction bloat, and with how complex some of the newer models have made the game. And I saw also Dawei is here, okay, and he put 3 letters together and it brought like PTSD back. Okay, I just got some Vietnam flashback, okay, which is the HPA. For you who don't know,
what's HPA? I don't even know.
HPA is
Hell Pit Abomination.
Okay? This bloody thing, okay, has given me nightmares. Okay, especially for a Lizardman player with no easy access to fire damage. So HPA is also another example of just egregious flavors gone too wild. It just became overwhelming for any player to deal with. Okay, so Count Elector Dan. King of War is one of the most diceless wargaming diciest, which makes it very stringy and dependent on the dice mood. I was hoping command make it more consistent, but command itself needs dice. Okay, I think this is I believe the two of you will have something to say about that. Maybe I bring the floor back to our Pathfinder.
Yeah, so I agree. I think you roll a lot of dice in Kings of War. We recommend a new player should have at least 20 dice when you start off. If not, you'll be rolling batches and batches of dice. So with more dice comes more variance. in that sense. When you have 30 attacks, you can get 10 hits or you can get 25 hits, depending on your dice mood for that day. So I think that is something that could be changed to reduce the number of attacks overall, to make it less swingy. And I think a lot depends on the nerf roll. I think for those people that do not know, there's actually a 2d6 roll to see whether you break the unit or not. So that can be quite swingy you can roll a 12, you can roll a double 1, which is like the worst thing you can roll in that sense. So I think I'm not so sure how command dice help in that, because you roll for command dice each turn. There's also a dice roll in itself.
No, but see, he's saying that command dice is also dice rolls. He's saying that command dice doesn't really address or help the problem.
Actually, just now you're saying less dice might solve the problem, but actually the more dice you roll, the more it will tend towards the average result. So I think rolling more dice is better than rolling less.
Actually, that's a very good point. It's actually very counterintuitive. But actually, what Page says is facts. Yeah.
The more dice you roll,
how about when you spike it high or spike it low? That amount of dice, everything you spike low, and it's like, oh.
Right, you roll 30 dice on 4+, right? The rolling 30 dice is more likely to have 15 successes. But let's say you roll 3 dice on 4+, there's a high likelihood you get 3 success, but there's not a very high likelihood that you get 30 success out of 30 dice. So the spikes should be less also when you roll more dice. So I actually think rolling more dice is better. Except for a slow player like me, I take a long time to roll.
Every unit should have 150 attacks. all honors are 220. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, but I mean, in a sense, it's a human psychology thing. You remember, I have 20 hits, 30 hits, I do a lot of damage. So maybe it sticks in your head a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's more crazy when you remember rolling 30 dice and only have 3 success, rather than rolling 3 dice and have 0 success. That happens quite often enough.
But I do agree with Page. I think the amount of dice rolled is okay for Kings of War. I think it's okay.
Except when you do a real charge, 75 dice. Wow,
that's okay. That's just 25 dice rolling 3 times.
Okay, so Liang Wei
Hao.
Exactly what I was talking about to get. Coming from fantasy, King of War units seem similar across factions. Infantry has similar stats, Hammer has similar stats, and so do monsters. Which is I think with some exception, with some notable exception, I guess that's
I think that makes it easy to understand other factions also. That the stats are roughly the same. Infantry should roughly be something like that. They're on foot. They should be about this speed. Elves are a little bit faster, so on and so forth. How hard they hit, and so I think that brings a lot of familiarity when you play and when you try to understand your opponent's faction.
But that throws flavor out the window. So I think the comparison here is, or the debate here is, flavor versus how what's the word for it?
like the
simple rules.
Simplicity. I think
easier to get in.
Another thing is with the number of factions, right? And there are about 600 to 700 different unit entries in Kings of War. So there will always be some overlap. So unless they reduce the number of units, they make it a bit more unique. Or I think what they're trying to do now is have one unit but have different upgrades to give you different profiles.
So this is what I feel with flavorful game rules or flavorful system. You will have fun playing casually, but with Kings of War rules, right, simple, you will have people who likes to play competitively. I think that is very important for what kind of player you are. If you like casual plays and fun things that happen in a game, then that flavorful game system is one for you. If you like to go compete in a world level, you go compete in overseas, any country, I think Kings of War is a game for you because the rules are set and it's more a pilot skill than what you bring on the table, I would say. Yeah.
So to follow up on How's comment, so he said, I guess that's the drawback. We have to pay for balance when units are so vastly different. Like in fantasy, the game balance goes out the window.
So vice versa.
Yeah. Dawei. So you cannot complain units like HPA. Then I will always complain about the PTSD I get from your HPA. Yes, I mean when I saw that 3 letters, I also got the PTSD. Dawei, please get out of here with your HPA.